Hey everyone, welcome to the online program of Amrita IAS Academy. My name is Sibi Joy, and as part of our monthly current affairs MCQ series, this is part 1B of July 2020. So without any delay, we'll go into the questions. Question number 13. In context of Yadadri technique, consider the following statements. 1. It is a rainwater and grey water harvesting technique. 2. It is a modified from the Japanese Miyawaki technique to suit our native conditions and species. Choose the correct code. Option A 1 only, option B 2 only, option C both 1 and 2, and option D none of the above. So it's a two-statement question, and the Yadadri technique has been frequently asked or frequently mentioned in the newspapers consistently. And even if you don't know about the Yadadri technique, if you look at the second statement, the Japanese Miyawaki technique, that is also has been very commonly mentioned in the newspaper because it is a technique for rapid afforestation of trees in urban areas. So the first statement is wrong. It is not a rainwater and grey water harvesting technique, but rather it is a method for afforestation. So this is not a really difficult question. It was actually mentioned in the newspapers for a few times. So it is comparatively easy question, and we can definitely hit it. Or even if you don't know it, take this opportunity to learn about this question, and we can definitely go solve this kinds of question. So we'll go for the explanation. The answer is option B 2 only. In the sixth phase of its flagship greening scheme, Telangana Ku Harita Haram, the state government would be focusing its effort on improving green cover in the state through what is being referred as the Yadadri model. So the statement 1 is not correct because the Yadadri technique of urban afforestation helps trees like local gooseberry and custard apple grow in a limited space and in a little time. The Yadadri model has proven successful in not just making an area green, but also creating rich biodiversity in the place. It is also cost effective. The second statement, the Yadadri pattern follows the Japanese Miyawaki technique invented by the Japanese botanist Akira Miyawaki, which is fast gaining popularity, especially in the urban areas. So Japanese Miyawaki technique, a very similar technique, is known as the Yadadri model, and it actually follows the Japanese Miyawaki technique. So that is the explanation for this. Learn about this. We'll go for the next question. Question number 14. In context of National Statistical Commission, consider the following statements. 1. It was constituted on the recommendations of Dr. C. Rangarajan Commission. 2. It is a statutory organization. 3. It is chaired by the Finance Minister. Choose the correct code. Option A 1 only, option B 2 and 3 only, option C 1 and 3 only, and option D all of the above. So earlier, like I said, we will be learning about the statutory bodies, the statutory constitutional bodies as part of our polity syllabus during our civil service preparation. So definitely you will know which are the statutory bodies and which are not. So the National Statistical Commission is not a statutory body, and with that we can eliminate the second statement from the options. When we eliminate the second statements, we are left with just two options, which is option A 1 only and option C 1 and 3 only. These are, so we managed to make a 50-50 elimination. Based upon this, we also know the first statement is right. Let's look at the third statement. It is chaired by the Finance Minister. No, it's a wrong. It's a factual fact that the Finance Minister is not the chairperson of the National Statistical Commission. It has its own chairperson. So the third statement is also wrong. Even if we don't know about it, we can learn it. This is an opportunity to learn it. Let's look at the explanation. The answer is option A 1 only. Former Reserve Bank of Governor C. Rangarajan has been conferred the PC Mahalanobis Lifetime Achievement Award in recognition of his contribution to official statistics. He wished that the National Statistical Commission will be given a statutory form soon. The statement 1 is correct because in line with the recommendations of the Dr. C. Rangarajan Commission on 1st of June 2005, the Government of India has resolved to set up a National Statistical Commission, the NSC. The statement 2 is not correct because one of the key recommendations of this commission was to establish a permanent National Commission on Statistics to serve as a nodal and empowered body for all core statistical activities of the country, evolve, monitor and enforce statistical priorities and standards, and to ensure statistical coordination among the different agencies involved. So the Rangarajan Commission also recommended that the commission be initially set up through a government order. It is therefore not a statutory body. That is what we have to, that is the key takeaway from the second statement explanation. Looking at the third statement, the commission has a part-time chairperson, 4 part-time members and an ex officio member. The Chief Statistician of India, the post created specifically as the head of the National Statistical Office, is the secretary of the commission. He is also the secretary to the Government of India in the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So that is the explanation for this question. We'll go for the next question. Question number 15. Consider the following statements about the Integrated Disease Surveillance Program or IDSP. It is a disease surveillance scheme under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in India, assisted by the World Bank. 2. It seeks to set up a central disease surveillance unit and a state surveillance unit in each state where data is collected and analyzed. Select the correct answer using the given below code. Option A 1 only, option B 2 only, option C both 1 and 2, and option D none of the above. So, integrated disease surveillance program. Let's look at the statements. It's a disease surveillance scheme under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare assisted by the World Bank. The statement seems very right, very logical, because it talks about disease surveillance, and the ministry involved is also the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and the World Bank is also assisting in that, which is also true. It is quite possible that can happen. Let's look at the second statement. It seeks to set up a central disease surveillance unit and a state surveillance unit in each state where data is collected and analyzed. Yes, that is also true, because it's just collecting the data about that. So the second statement also seems highly true. There is not much scope for error. So in this case, let's go for option C, both 1 and 2, which would be the right answer. So let's look at the statement 1, the explanation for that. The IDSP is a disease surveillance scheme under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in India, assisted by the World Bank. The scheme aims to strengthen disease surveillance for infectious diseases to detect and respond to outbreaks quickly. In the second statement, the scheme seeks to set up a central disease surveillance unit and a state surveillance unit in each state where the data is collected and analyzed. A large amount of data on disease reports are collected in order to be able to identify the outbreak of a disease, identify its causes, and take corresponding preventive and responsive measures. An early warning system has been put into place in order to take timely preventive steps. So this is a very good explanation for the IDSP program. Learn about it, see which is the ministry involved, and what are the bodies which come under the IDSP program. That is the Central Disease Surveillance Unit and the State Surveillance Unit. That is all for this explanation. Let's go for the next question. Consider the following statements about the Astra missile system. Statement 1, it is an all-weather indirect fire free flight artillery rocket system. 2, it is developed by the DRDO, or the Defense Research and Development Organization. Select the correct answer using the given below code. Option A 1 only, option B 2 only, option C both 1 and 2, and option D none of the above. So looking at this, Astra missile system is one of the very famous missile systems developed by India, and when you are preparing for your civil services examination, you will be learning about the various defense capabilities of India, the names of its missiles and its various equipments. So the Astra is not an all-weather indirect fire free flight artillery rocket system, rather it is an air-to-air missile. So you will be learning that as part of your civil service preparation. Even if you have not learned it, it has been mentioned in the news. You can also read about it. We will be covering it as part of our explanation too, so do not worry about it. But it is developed by the DRDO, so I can definitely say that the second statement is right. We will go for option B, that is 2 only, as the right answer. We'll go for that is the right answer. The explanation, the statement 1 is not correct, because it is the Pinaka missile system for the army, which is an all-weather indirect fire free flight artillery rocket system according to the DRDO. Whereas the Astra missile, with its beyond visual range capability, is a class of air-to-air missile system, or the AAM system, designed to be mounted on a fighter aircraft and destroy highly maneuvering supersonic aircraft. It has all-weather day and night capability. The missile is being developed in multiple variants to meet specific requirements. The Astra Mark 1 weapon system has been integrated with the Sukhoi 30 Mark 1 aircraft, which is a part of the Indian Air Force. It can be launched in autonomous and buddy mode of operation, with features like lock-on before launch and lock-on after launch. The second statement is also correct, because it is an all-weather beyond visual range air-to-air missile developed by the DRDO. It is the first air-to-air missile developed by India. So that is the explanation for the Astra missile. We are going for the next question. Consider the following statements about the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, or the UNCLOS. First statement, it defines the rights and responsibilities of nations with respect to the use of the world's oceans and management of marine natural resources. Second statement, the UN has direct operational role in the implementation of the convention. 3. UNCLOS as the law of the sea is binding on its members. Which of the above mentioned statements are correct? Option A 1 and 2 only, option B 2 and 3 only, option C 1 and 3 only, and option D all of the above. So looking at this, definitely I can say that the second statement is highly irregular, because the UN does not have any direct operational role in the implementation of the convention of the UNCLOS, because this is if UN has direct operational role, it is going to affect the sovereignty rights of the various countries. So you can directly take that as an attack upon the sovereignty of a country, and no country is going to allow it. So taking that into account, you can say the second statement is highly irregular. Remove the second statement, you are just left with one option, which is option C 1 and 3 only. Let's look at the explanation. The answer is C. Statement 1 is correct. The United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea, or the UNCLOS, is also called the Law of the Sea Convention or the Law of the Sea Treaty, is the international agreement that resulted from the third UN Conference on the Law of the Sea, or the UNCLOS 3, which took place between 1973 and 1982. The Law of the Sea Convention defines the rights and responsibilities of nations with respect to the use of world's oceans, establishing guidelines for business, the environment, and the management of marine natural resources. So that is the general idea about the UNCLOS. Now let's look at it statement wise. The statement 2 is not correct because even as the name of the nautical law suggests the United Nations involvement, the UN does not have any major functional role in the working of UNCLOS. While the Secretary General of the UN receives instruments of ratification and accession, the UN provides support for meetings of states party to the convention. The UN has no direct operational role in the implementation of the UNCLOS. For the third statement, in 1967, the third UN Conference on the Law of the Sea was convened, and it led to the now existing nautical law. The UNCLOS is the currently prevailing law of the sea, is binding completely. The UN General Assembly decided in 2015 to develop an internationally legal binding instrument under the UNCLOS on the conservation and sustainable use of the marine biological diversity of areas beyond the national jurisdiction that is still being discussed. So that is the explanation for this question. Let's look for the next question. In context of Institutes of Eminence, or the IOE scheme, consider the following statements. 1. It is a recognition scheme for higher education institutes. 2. UGC had constituted an Empowered Expert Committee EEC under N. Gopalsamy to recommend a list of IOE. 3. Private institutions granted with IOE status will get additional funding up to 1000 crores. Choose the correct code. Option A 1 and 2 only, option B 2 only, option C 1 and 3 only, and option D all of the above. So this question, the Institutes of Eminence have been present in the current affairs for current affairs cycles and the news cycles for the past few months, where many institutes, many universities have been given institutions of eminence status, and they are being developed more. And one thing we can note in that is the third statement is absolutely wrong, because this 1000 crore is actually given for government institutes, whereas the private institutes will not get any kind of additional funding, whereas this 1000 crore is given for government institutes. Just taking that into account, I can say that the third option is wrong. Remove the third option left, you will be left with the option A and B. The second statement is right because it is present in both options. And the first statement, it is a recognition scheme for higher education institution. Yes, that is the idea behind the IOE scheme. So even if you don't know it, we learnt about it. Let's look at the explanation. The answer is option A, 1 and 2 only. Statement 1 is correct because the IOE is a recognition scheme for higher education institutes in India set up by the UGC in 2017. It aims to provide regulatory structure for enabling higher educational institutions to become world-class teaching and research institutions. The second statement is correct because UGC had constituted an Empowered Expert Committee under N. Gopalsamy to recommend a list of institutions on the basis of the following criteria. Institutions which have been figured in the top 500 of the QS World University Rankings or top 50 of the National Institutional Ranking Framework, or the NIRF ranking, shall be recommended for the IOE status. Yet to be established or greenfield institutions will also be recommended. They would get a 3-year period to establish and operationalize, and therefore thereafter EEC will consider giving IOE status to such institutions. The third statement is not correct because the benefits granted under the IOE scheme is government institutions will get additional funding of up to 1000 crores. Private institutions proposed as IOE will not get any financial support. So that is the explanation for this question. Let's go for the next question. In the context of Nagarhole National Park, consider the following statements. Statement 1, it is a part of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Statement 2, this tiger reserve is located in Kerala. Statement 3, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Choose the correct code. Option A 1 only, option B 2 and 3 only, option C 1 and 3 only, and option D all of the above. So Nagarhole National Park is a very important national park which we will be learning as part of an environment syllabus for your civil services examination. Even for those who are not aware of it, it has come up in the news recently with regards to its location as near the tri-junction area of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So frankly saying, we can say that the Nagarhole National Park is not a part of, it's not located in the state of Kerala, but rather it is located in the state of Karnataka. You will be learning about the various tiger reserves and the elephant reserves which are present in India, and even the various national parks present in India. You will be it is expected of you to learn about the locations and where they are approximately located, so that this will help you to find and understand where they are located, and this can help you in your civil services preliminary examination. So the second statement is absolutely wrong. Just remove that second statement. you are left with two options, that is option A 1 only and option C 1 and 3 only. We managed to make a 50-50 elimination. Now let's take the third statement. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. UNESCO World Heritage Sites are also something that you will be learning as part of your environment, also as part of your history. So we can say that the Nagarhole National Park is not a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So you can remove that too. Then you are left with just one option, which is option A 1 only. Let's go for the explanation. Answer is A. Statement 1 is correct because Nagarhole National Park is a national park located in Kodagu district in Mysore district in Karnataka, India. It is one of India's premier tiger reserves along with the adjoining Bandipur Tiger Reserve and Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. This park was declared the 37th Project Tiger Reserves of India 1999. It is a part of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. The second statement is not correct because Nagarhole National Park is a national park located in Kodagu district and Mysore district in Karnataka, India. The third statement is not correct because the park stretches over 643 square kilometers between the Coorg and Mysore districts in the southern state of Karnataka and forms a part of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. The park is currently being considered by the UNESCO for selection as a World Heritage Site. It is also known as the Nagarhole Tiger Reserve. So the third statement is also not correct. That is the explanation. It is just being considered by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. It has not yet been declared as such. So the third statement is also wrong. The answer is option A. That is the explanation for this question. Let's go for the next question. Consider the following statements about the infrastructure investment trusts or InvITs. 1. It enables direct investment of small amounts of money from possible individual or institutional investors in infrastructure to earn a small portion of the income as return. 2. They are regulated by the Securities and Exchange Board of India. 3. It may help in attracting international finance into Indian infrastructure sector. Select the correct answer using the given below code. Option A 1 and 2 only, option B 2 only, option C 1 and 3 only, and option D all of the above. So this is a highly technical question with regards to infrastructure investment trusts. It's related to the economy part of your syllabus. It's very similar to mutual funds. You will be learning about them. You will be learning what this is. But for those who can understand it, just understand it enables direct investment of small amounts of money from any individual or institutional investor in infrastructure so that they can earn a small income. That is the key definition of the infrastructure investment trust. The first statement is absolutely right. Looking at that, you can say that the second statement, the option B, which has only 2 only, can be eliminated. The second statement, they are regulated by Securities and Exchange Board of India. That is also absolutely right. You can eliminate option C because it does not have the second statement also in it. So now you are left with option A and option D, which is 1 and 2 only, and option D, which is all of the above. Looking at the third statement, that is also true. So we can say that this question, all the three statements are correct. The answer is going to be option D. But since it's a technical question, it may not be possible for someone who is not having very much idea about in which to attend this question properly. Do not worry. It's present in the current affairs frequently, so you would learn about it. Even if you haven't learned about it, we are going to learn about it as part of our explanation. So the answer is D. Statement 1 is correct because InvITs are mutual fund like institutions that enable investments into the infrastructure sector by pooling small sums of money from multitude of individual investors for directly investing in infrastructure so as to return a portion of the income to unit holders of InvITs who pooled in the money. Statement 2 is also correct because they are set up as a trust and registered with SEBI. An InvIT has 4 parties such as trustee, sponsor, and investment manager and project manager. They are regulated by the Securities Market Regulator, which is SEBI. The statement 3 is also correct because it may help in attracting international finance into Indian infrastructure sector. It will also enable the investors to hold a diversified portfolio of infrastructure assets. So that is the explanation for this question. Let's go for the next question. Consider the following statements about the Food and Agriculture Organization or the FAO. It is a specialized agency of the United Nations that works to defeat hunger and improve food security. Second statement, it conducts research and collects data on agriculture output, production and development. Third statement, it created the Codex Alimentarius Commission to develop food standards. 4. It initiated globally important agriculture heritage systems GIAHS to safeguard agriculture biodiversity. Select the correct answer using the given below code. Option A 1, 2 and 4 only, option B 2 and 4 only, option C 1, 3 and 4 only, and option D all of the above. So these are the options given to it. Now the Food and Agriculture Organization is a very important organization and it's a specialized agency of the United Nations. You will be learning about the FAO organization. You will also be learning about the United Nations and the various organizations which are part of it. And since this is a very difficult question, you will be learning about it. There is not much techniques you can use to eliminate it, since there is not much statements which are highly contradicting to the theme of the question. Each and everything they mentioned in this question is actually true about the FAO. There is no statement or no keyword which you can take to remove from this. So taking that into account, I choose that option D, all of the above, is the correct answer. The answer is D. Statement 1 and 2 are correct. The FAO of the UN is a specialized agency that leads international efforts to defeat hunger and improve nutrition and food security. It helps governments and agencies to coordinate their activities to improve, develop agriculture, forestry, fisheries, land, water resources, and also provides research, technical assistance, educational training programs, and provides data on agriculture output, production, and development. The statement third is also correct because it created the Codex Alimentarius Commission in 1961 along with the World Health Organization to develop standards, guidelines, and texts such as the codes of practice under the joint FAO World WHO Food Standards Program. The main aim of the program are protecting consumer health, ensuring fair trade, and promoting coordination of all food standards work undertaken by intergovernmental and non-governmental organizations. The fourth statement is also correct because the globally important agriculture heritage system or the GIAHS partnership initiative was conceptualized and presented by Parviz Kufa Khan, the task manager of Chapter 10 of Agenda 21 in FAO of United Nations in 2002 during the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, South Africa. This partnership initiative aims to identify, support and safeguard globally important agriculture heritage systems or GIAHS and their livelihoods, agriculture associated biodiversity, landscapes, knowledge systems and cultures around the world. The GIAHS partnership recognizes the crucial importance of the well-being of family farming communities in an integrated approach while directing activities towards sustainable agriculture and rural development. So that is the explanation for this question. It's a very detailed explanation. Please read through it. It talks about the Food and Agriculture Organization. This explanation alone is enough for you to understand in detail about the FAO. That is all for this question. Let's go for the next question. Consider the following statements about Swami Vivekananda. 1. He founded the Ramakrishna Mission. 2. He attached great importance to the unity of all religions and their fusion into one universal religion. 3. He believed in Dvaita Vedantism. Which of the following above mentioned statements are correct? Option A 1 and 2 only, option B 2 and 3 only, option C 1 and 3 only, and option D all of the above. So taking this into account, learning about the Swami Vivekananda and his philosophy, Swami Vivekananda was one of modern India's greatest philosophers. We will be learning about him as part of our history syllabus during the civil service preparation. So we know that the first statement, he founded the Ramakrishna Mission, is true. Second statement, he attached great importance to the unity of all religions and their fusion into one universal religion, that is also true. The third statement, he believed in Dvaita Vedantism. No, he was a believer of the Advaita school of Vedanta. So taking that into account, I can say the third statement is absolutely wrong. Then you are left with just one option, option A, 1 and 2 only. Now do not worry, everybody may not know about these topics. You will be learning about it, or even if you don't know about it, now take this as an opportunity to learn and know these points. The answer is A. The statement 1 is correct because Swami Vivekananda founded the Ramakrishna Math and the Ramakrishna Mission. The statement 2 is also correct because he attached great importance to the unity of all religions and their fusion into one universal religion. Statement 3 is not correct because Swami Vivekananda was a great lover of Vedantic philosophy or Advaita Vedantism. He believed in monism. He had firm faith on one God. So that is the explanation about the Swami Vivekananda and that statement. Let's learn this. We'll go for the next question. In context of winter grade diesel, consider the following statements. The Indian Institute of Petroleum and Energy, the IIPE, has developed this specialized fuel specifically for high altitude regions and low temperature regions. Statement 2. It remains unfrozen up to minus 33 degrees Celsius, thus providing year-round access to snow-capped border regions. Choose the correct code. Option A 1 only, option B 2 only, option C both 1 and 2, and option D none of the above. So this is a very highly specific question about winter grade diesel. But this is something we have to learn. Please know that it is not the Indian Institute of Petroleum and Energy which has provided this, but rather the Indian Oil Corporation which has developed this specialized fuel. So take this as a factual question. It may seem to be that both of the statements are right, but actually the first statement is not the IIPE, it is the IOC. So it's a factual question. There is not much logic you can use. So generally we may choose both 1 and C as the right answer, but this has been in the news currently. So we learn about it, we look at the explanation. The answer is option B, 2 only. Statement 1 is not correct because the Indian Oil Corporation IOC has developed the winter diesel specialized fuel specifically for high altitude regions and low temperature regions such as Ladakh, where ordinary diesel can become unstable. The second statement is correct because it can remain unfrozen up to minus 33 degrees Celsius. It would help provide year-round access to snow-capped border regions and is a part of India's efforts to speed up strategic road connectivity. This new fuel will help Indian security forces to stock up on crucial supplies and ammunition that gets cut off due to bad weather in winters. Motorists in high altitude sectors like Ladakh, Kargil, Kaza and Key long face the problem of freezing of diesel in their vehicles when winter temperatures drop to as low as minus 30 degrees Celsius. Indian Oil has come up with an innovative solution to this problem by introducing the special winter grade diesel with a low pour point of minus 33 degrees Celsius, which does not lose its fluidity function even in extreme winter conditions. So, know about the winter grade diesel, who has provided this and where it is being used and what is its objective. So, keep this in mind. We'll go for the next question. In context of Prasar Bharati, consider the following statements. 1. It is a statutory autonomous body. 2. It is India's largest public broadcasting agency and conducts public broadcasting services to inform and entertain the public. 3. The President of India appoints the chairman of Prasar Bharati board. Choose the correct code. Option A 1 and 2 only, option B 2 only, option C 1 and 3 only, and option D all of the above. So, Prasar Bharati it is the India's largest public broadcasting agency and conducts public broadcasting services to inform and entertain the public. This is the absolute truth about the Prasar Bharati body, and the second statement is right. Just taking that into account, we can eliminate the option C, which is 1 and 3 only. Why did I say take the second statement first? Because every one of us must be familiar with Doordarshan, which is coming under the Prasar Bharati. So, if you are familiar with watching the channel of Doordarshan, you will see that under that there will be the Prasar Bharati symbol, and taking that into account, I can say it is India's largest public broadcasting agency. So, since the second statement is right, let's look at the first and the third statement. It is a statutory autonomous body. Yes, the Prasar Bharati is a statutory autonomous body. You will be learning about it when you talk about statutory bodies and constitutional bodies. So, the first statement is also absolutely right. Again, we can eliminate one more option, which is option B 2 only. Now, we are left with just two options, option A 1 and 2 only, and option D all of the above. So, now there is a 50-50 option to choose. We managed to eliminate it to two options. The third statement, the President of India appoints the chairman of the Prasar Bharati board. Yes, it is the President of India who appoints the chairman of the Prasar Bharati board. It's a fact. We have to learn about it. We can take this opportunity to learn about it. Let's go for the explanation. Statement 1 is correct. The answer is D. It's a statutory autonomous body set up by an act of parliament and comprises the Doordarshan television network and the All India Radio, which were earlier media units of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. The second statement is correct because it is India's largest public broadcasting agency, which conducts public broadcasting services intended to inform and entertain the public. The third statement is also correct because the Prasar Bharati board consists of a chairman and other members. The President of India appoints a chairman and the other members except the ex officio members, nominated member and the elected members. So, that is the explanation about the Prasar Bharati. I hope you all note this point down. Note these points because they have been coming in the news frequently. We will go for the next question and the last question. In the context of red coral kukri, consider the following statements. Statement 1, it is protected under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. 2, it is a nocturnal, non-venomous, brightly colored snake. Choose the correct code. Option A 1 only, option B 2 only, option C both 1 and 2, and option D none of the above. So, the red coral kukri was present in the news recently. One important point we have to note in that is it is a nocturnal, non-venomous, brightly colored snake. So, that is an absolute truth. So, the option B or the second statement is right. Taking that into account, we can say that either option B 2 only or option C both 1 and 2 are correct. Now, the question is on the statement 1. It is protected under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. The Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 is given for it is the highest level of protection offered to animals in India. It is only offered to such specific animals. So, we can say the red coral kukri does not come under that. Very few animals come under it, and they are highly major important animals or the keystone animals to the environment. The red coral kukri does not come under the Schedule 1 till present. So, we can say that the first statement is wrong. Let's look at the explanation. The answer is B. The reptile was first sighted in Dudhwa in 1936, and even its zoological name Oligodon cairiensis finds its root in its Cairi specific location. Sightings of this brightly colored snake are rare. It was seen last year for the first time after a gap of almost 82 years. This first statement is not correct because in India, Oligodon cariensis is protected under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 under Schedule 4, whereas the second statement is right because it is a nocturnal, non-venomous reptile feeding on insects and worms. So that is all for this video. I hope you all have a nice day. This is CB Joy signing off. Thank you.